So just you're good here. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. How do I mute that? Oh, then agree. Do you have to use the mic? You don't have to. Yeah. You're good, man. Yeah. Yeah, he's just gonna just project instead of using the microphone. We try.
There is a chair there if you want to sit down, and we are connected. There are
All right, good to go. All right. Attention, please. And yeah, today we are gonna see about IoT security. How many of you have like some experience around IoT ecosystem, like a development or anything at all? Okay. So we are gonna look into the mindset behind IoT security, how those things actually work, and like what are the common attack surfaces we see in IoT security in general basis. Because of the vast ecosystem of IoT devices, they integrate a lot of technologies together. For example, in IoT environment, you have like mobile device, or you have sometimes web apps as well, and you have a hardware stuff as well. So the attack surface keeps on expanding as we connect more and more technologies together. So yeah, who am I? I'm Chirag Jariwala. You can call me CJ Jackers. That's my name. I go by online, and I'm originally in Canada. I'm an application security engineer, and I work with Mandy Montreal remotely. And before I came to Canada, I used to work in IP security back in my home country, India, and that's where I learned the skills. And yeah, that's what I'm here for. I'm gonna share you all the knowledge I have in IoT security, so you guys can have like the idea how things works in this whole security domain of IoT. So yeah, emergence of IoT devices. Like there are a lot of we have various sectors in IoT. Like you have industrial, you have end consumer products, and you also have like healthcare. So you can imagine like the security impact of this vast ecosystem is not just limited on based on software. It's impacting real lives. When something gets hacked, you are talking about these things getting like impacted, whether it's a healthcare safety, whether it's consumer products, whether it's an industrial device where the workers are working, and they have a danger of physical security if these devices get breached. So the real human lives are in danger when these things get hacked. So we need to look into like why we should take these things more seriously than the usual what we are today following. So yeah, the question is why I should care about IoT security that much, to be honest. And there are some numbers for my non-technical brothers and like managers who like to deal with a lot of numbers. So these are the, like to show kind of seriousness, like what are the expected growth of this IoT whole domain in general. So yeah, take away from this. Yep, me after saving thousands of dollars with the hard-coded credentials for maintenance mode, and me after ransomware, crashes our cooling system for power plant because yeah, again, like that's what the need is about. So again, the whole point was like instead of looking the cybersecurity as added cost in IoT environment, people to start looking at this as other insurance because again the impact is very much serious and yeah, it's not limited to business logic as we previously mentioned. So yeah, know your threats. What are the threats out there? Who are the people involved in the like whole IoT security sector? So there are like threat actors, botnet creators, people who create malware, dangerous cyber weapons, and like white hat security researchers, good people, which we are all gathered over here. And yeah, the good people also submit cool talks at the DEF CON and places like that. So again, all the research is out there for you to explore. And the another one, third one is the like you may already know, all the file letter agencies like CIA, NSA, or other nation state actors who engage in cyber warfare on a regular basis and compromise these IoT devices because they want to gain control of those things to yeah do command and control operations. And this is the screenshot from the WikiLeaks document, Morg 7 CIA, where the whole procedures are highlighted, how the CIA gets into the like whole microtik router, how they do all of the reverse engineering stuff, explain development. You can explore the WikiLeaks on your free time, understand that. Attack surface, my attack. So, how big of the attack surface we are talking about? This big. Because we are talking about software, we are talking about the hardware, and we are also talking about network side of things. Because you have like all these three components, what makes the mainly IoT ecosystem, and yeah, all the vulnerabilities which are connected to these three main domains of IoT security. So you can imagine if you are like let's say you are good at like software security, you can still contribute to IoT security as well. Because OWASP software or like OWASP web related stuff, as I said, there are web apps too, APIs as well. So you can still contribute even if you don't have the other set of skills. You can use the existing skills and incorporate with the like the IoT security. So yeah. Now let's see like where you can use all of this knowledge which you are gonna acquire today. So there are like mainly I would say it's like red and blue team kind of a deal. One is like firmware reverse engineering, another one is malware analysis, and there are like multiple architectures in IoT devices like ARM, MIPS, or RISC. You can pick up any architecture you like. You can run assembly in it, and either you can go to threat research side of things, or you can go to exploit development side of things. And yeah, you can that may help overall IoT systems become more secure. Let's talk about the knowledge checklist. So what you like to get into this field, what you have to learn. So most of the IoT device we talks about are Linux-based environments. Like if you look at the router, if you look at your own phone, smartphones, or everything, they all run a Unix-based operating system. And yeah, how basically a program works in a Linux environment. So you understand how ins and outs of the program execution, and you can start developing your own exploits for those environments. Third will be the basics of assembly. As I said, we have like multiple of those assembly languages. One is like ARM, MIPS, and RISC. We are gonna see some slides about like ARM exploit development basics. So first, I will start with the ELF runtime specifics, how this ELF binaries in a Linux environment work, and what are the main differences. So first thing is each and every binary inside a Linux has like multiple of these sections you would care about. First is like text, data, and then procedure linkage table and global offset table. I have put all the definitions, what they all do over here, and what are the main differences between all of those. And you can see the example screenshot over here, which is like hello world basic program on a Raspberry Pi. And what are, if you open it in a GDB and type in an info file command in a GDB, it will show you all the sections inside that binary file. So basically, yeah, you can get to know what are the sections inside of a binary file. Now, the main point of is knowing what is like static and dynamic loading, because sometimes it helps you to develop your exploits as well, and you'll see the difference. So yeah, so as you can see over here, the first one over here and the second one over here, there is a small difference. Anyone can tell? Any ideas? If you can identify the difference between those, like I talked about. Yeah. Yep, exactly. You are correct. So yeah, PLT means procedure linkage table. So it means like it's gonna run a dynamic loading and static loading. You just put on the address and it's gonna load that function from the binary itself, because that function is already part of the binary. It's not gonna look externally somewhere on a system library. That is the difference. So we will look into like the basics of ARM assembly basics, like what are the main differences when you talk about ARM assembly exploit development, and like how you are gonna like use existing knowledge if you have stuff like learned about x86, for example. This is the main difference over here. I put it in this slide. You can see like what are the general purpose registers in x86 versus ARM, and what are the each of those does, and what are the similar ones versus x86 versus ARM. Now we are gonna talk about syscalls, because when we were trying to develop an exploit in a Linux environment, we are going to execute some sort of functions. So what are those functions, you may ask? So of course, opening a connection, reading a file, any sort of things you can do and like leverage as an attacker or exploit developer, you're gonna use those functions and you're gonna use the syscalls for it, which are called system calls. So how you can get those syscalls, you may ask? So there is a simple command you can run it in a Linux terminal, man syscalls. Another one is man. Man actually tells you like what are the available sections inside the manual. So if you haven't used the manual before, it gives you the idea like why we use certain numbering. So let's say if you do man to socket, But let's say if you do man open or read, sometimes what happens is the C library and the assembly code are same. Sometimes for the manual for those are same. So by default, it gives you for a programming manual, but you want for assembly code. So that's why you put a two over here to specifically tell your manual that, hey, I want to learn about system calls, not some like default programming function. So there is a thing in a ARM assembly. So like it's kind of like 32, 64-bit, but like today we are gonna talk about 32 versus 16 bits. We will see why. So yeah, ARM is like 32-bit, Thumb is 16 bits, and there are some differences over here. So like it's a little bit faster, there's slower performance. Why we do like this? Like you may ask, CJ, like why we want the smaller instruction sets? The of course answer is like in IoT devices, we have very limited memory. Like it's not even like gigabytes, it's sometimes kilobytes and megabytes. So you are dealing with very small memory. So you have to save as much as space possible. So that way you have to keep your like whole shell code as smaller as possible. So that way you don't use much memory and end up crashing the device because that's not your end goal. Maybe if you are like a very malicious attacker, sometimes they do, but if you really want to gain control for a long term, you wanna take care about this. And how you can switch to ARM versus thumb mode. It's given example over here. So like this was the ARM assembly over here. You add these two instructions. I'm doing nothing but adding program counter 1 and a result to R3 and then branching to R3. And what I'm telling is jumping to the next section because program counter, when it will come here, and it will just jump to the next section because I added already one to it. And the next, what is the next section? It's the thumb. I already told it in assembly, so it's gonna start executing the thumb code afterwards. And this is the simple shell code about like fork bomb. It's a very basic one. It's like a, I would say, hello world kind of a deal for a shell code. So like you can see over here, first I was in the like normal ARM mode, then I switched to thumb mode. I defined my own function called underscore loop, and what I did was like rest of the code just set up the like arguments. So I will go back to previous slide and I will show you where I mentioned it. You can see like there are like certain registers for useful as a function arguments. So like whenever you deal with the C function, like you want to open a file or open a socket, you are passing certain like values as an argument to those functions. How you can store those values? You use R0 to R5. Those registers are used as a function arguments. Those registers hold values for those function arguments. So that's what we are doing in that shell code. Yep. So that's what we are doing over here. We are setting up things and like we just in the fork one, we are not passing it. We are just calling the fork because fork doesn't takes any function arguments. So we just pass it and yeah, we basically keep on executing in this loop and keep on creating like new processes and eventually what happens? Your system gets crashed. And yeah, it happens more than often sometimes. Like there was the Silex malware. Silex malware was developed to crash IoT devices and like permanently destroy them. So it has been happening in the past that such a malware has like destroyed the whole IoT devices and made them unusable. Literally, they had to throw it because you can't do anything at all afterwards. And this is like this is like a shell code. It's gonna reverse shell, and this reverse shell, what it does is like you have a you're gonna get the connection back to you. That is what our end goal is. So can you guys tell me the like basic difference between a reverse shell and a bind shell?
Reverse shell, the victim machine is going to, so the attacker machine is listening, the victim machine is going to connect. On the bind shell, the attacker machine is going to set up a listener on the victim machine. And then connect to it.
Perfect. Yep. So yeah, that's the difference between bind shell and reverse shell over here. And yeah, this is what it does. And as I said in the previous slide, set up a function arguments, use R0 to R5 registers over here. And that's what we are doing. And R7 holds the system call number. The function you want to execute is hold it in the R7. And that's what 281 is used for socket. This 281 number, it's I'm moving 200 first and then adding 81, so that's 281. So 281 is the like system call number for socket. So first I set up the function argument in R0 and R1, then say set up the socket function, and this instruction, as we see, #1 does nothing but executes that thingy, and push the rest of the values to the stack, go forward. And these are the rest of the setup you have to do. Like you have to set up a connect function. You have to set up descriptors and stuff like that. One thing to note in Linux, everything is a file. Everything you do is a file. Like whether you make a connection or do anything, it's gonna treat it as a file. So that's why we sometimes deal with the file descriptors and pointers, stuff like those. And execv is very, it just executes your own custom command, and you basically call the shell message. So when the connection goes back to the attacker, you get the shell. And you have to put all the information in the section over here for structure. Now, sorry for boring you a lot with the theories. You say, hey, CJ, where is the demo you promised? Here it is. I'm going to show you just a second. So what we're going to see in the demo today. So in the demo, we're going to see some firmware, like how we can perform firmware reverse engineering. Those will be like very basic. It's not gonna be like ultra advanced and blow your minds, because I understand some of you guys have never deal with in-depth technical stuff before. So I kept the whole presentation in a way that I took care of all of the audience, kind of a way. So yeah, in the another one, be so you may ask how you get the firmware, right? You get the firmware files, TJ. Like the firmware files, you can get it from support pages, vendor support pages. For example, many of the routers and IoT devices you have, go to the vendor support page. For example, you have a TP-Link router in your home, and you would like to get a firmware. What you do is go to TP-Link site, enter the model number, and you'll land to a support page which says download this firmware binary or download this update. So that's one of the ways. Another way is some vendors, they don't release the firmware files. Sometimes they are locked behind paywall, they are only accessible to customers. Your only option is left with the extract the firmware from the target device itself. And again, as I said, this thing, of course, it's like a small computer. And when we talk about small computers, they have volatile and non-volatile memory. And you can leverage those mediums to extract the firmware. So it can be done over various hardware protocols and stuff like that, like SPI, I2C, data, stuff like those. And you can hook up to an external device like a Raspberry Pi, which supports those protocols, to the target device and extract the firmware. And there are many other hardware hacking devices out there, like a jet activator, and many those stuff you can buy online and start going on your way to extract firmware from the target device. Another one would be the encrypted firmwares. So sometimes what happens is like sometimes vendor try to obfuscate. I wouldn't say obfuscate, more or less encrypted. So that way it becomes hard to reverse engineer. It kind of like buys them a time. So what they do is like they do incremental updates. Like in a let's say version 1, they have a firmware which was not encrypted. What they do is like they push the encryption mechanism in version 1, and let's say version 1.1 is the encrypted firmware, and that firmware when you do the update, it's the decryption is handled by the mechanism pushed in the previous update. So yeah, that is often you can like there are like a lot of articles on it. You can go online and you can like search for an article about like how to decrypt the firmware for this particular router and stuff like that. Power of reverse engineering. If you have a really good skill at reverse engineering, no one is stopping you to decrypt the firmware. And yeah, and what we are going to see as a demo, which is the IoTGoat. So we are going to look into the virtual machine. We're running IoTGoat. We are going to look for like two vulnerabilities in IoTGoat as a demo. And the last one I have like kind of like automation platform for firmware, like a vulnerability assessment. So that platform I will showcase it over here. I'm not sponsored by any company or anything over here. It's just I'm doing as a good faith. That platform is really nice. I like it as like a security researcher, and that platform is really well. So yeah, before we go with the demo, it's break time.
Food is ready.
Yeah, so there's pizza, there's gluten free, there's vegetarian, there's pepperoni.
All right, we are back with the, as promised, part of the presentation. Again, the demo. The demo boards that nothing crashed today because in a cyber security, oftentimes you do the demo, it doesn't work. Something works. But hopefully, demo boards are with me today, and we are gonna look into the world of how you can deal with the firmware once you get the firmware. So we are gonna look into the IoTGoat firmware. You can download the IoTGoat firmware from the OWASP GitHub repository. So there will be like a Raspberry Pi image you can download, and once you download the online microphone test. All right. Sorry about that. We will continue. What we are seeing for my online folks, we are seeing the demo of the bin walk, and we will later look on to the the other tool which will help us to do a lot of the heavy lifting with the Binwalk does, and it's a kind of a platform as I discussed previously. So yeah, so to extract the firmware with the Binwalk, you just do -me. It starts doing it, and once it's done, it's extracted over there. And as you can see over here, like it has three things. It has a file system and it has a kernel. So it depends like what binary has. Sometimes they pack bootloader, sometimes they don't have a bootloader. It depends firmware to firmware, device to device, vendor to vendor. So we are gonna look into the like file system. So what first thing comes to your mind when you extract the file system? What like if you are an attacker, you get access to some local system and you have access to files. What's the first thing you will do? Get credentials, maybe? Yeah, you will get the credentials first, so you can like try to attack the users which are on the system. So let's look into our users. What are the users we have onto the system? And one common method, one common mistake people do is like when they are switching the files, they have habit of doing this. Don't do this. You will switching to your own, and don't blame. Hey CJ, I found the ETC password file, but you didn't have the, but you put a forward slash. That's why. So don't do that. So you go to ETC and like you do the cat. Let's see what are the users are on. Okay, so there are like IoTGoat user. I don't think you can read it. Yeah, IoTGoat user. That is the user we have. Interesting one. And the yeah, you can also get the password for this. So it's etc, and that would be shadow. And yeah, you can get the hash for the IoTGoat user. And if you have a like really good infrastructure, you can sit down and use a hashcat and start maybe like doing first on the password. That is the one basic way. But we are gonna look more like old school way. What like botnets and others people do is like they brute force over the network, because these people not gonna buy costly AWS GPU servers and thousands of that, because at the end black hat attackers also needs to make money. So that is the thing. Like they will be also try to cost effective in many ways. So we'll look it into old school way, which is like we now know the user, which is IoTGoat user. Now what we will do is what is the most common protocol used in the Linux? Can someone tell me? What is, yeah, SSH, right? So every in IoT ecosystem, these two are also commonly found, SSH and Telnet. Now you may ask, hey CJ, why Telnet? Why someone doesn't want encryption? Who is that fool? But it's not about being intelligent or no, it's about resources on those hardware, because a lot of time those hardware are very resource limited and they are not capable to perform encryption operations. So that's why some like vendors just push telnet instead of SSH. So whatever you find, you can brute force against. You can do that. So now we are gonna do that. I have a VM running IoT in the background, which has the like IP address and stuff like that. So let me just switch the screen for a moment. It's very small because yeah, it needs to install those virtual machine tools, but it's okay. We'll deal with it. Just a second. Online good. All right. So we are gonna just find out the IP, what it is. This is the IoTGoat. You can download it. So you go to the our OWASP IoTGoat repository. You can download the hard drive. It's very small, 8 megabytes, not even gigabytes, because it's from kind of a deep. And this whole thing runs on OpenWRT firmware. OpenWRT is open source, and that is like a kind of like a framework for developing firmware for like routers and network devices, stuff like that. And it's completely open source as well. So it kind of like you can, on your free time, you can go to OpenWRT and maybe try to find some CVEs for security research if you like to contribute to whole IoT spaces together. Now, yeah, this is the IP. I'm gonna tag this IP. It's 192. Okay. So we will note down this IP. Now again back to the terminal screen in a moment. Share my screen. Online new screen good. All right. So just a second. Okay, so now we are gonna use very old school, typical use in offensive security for performing brute force attack over network, which is Hydra. So we are gonna use Hydra, and we are gonna use a password list. And can anyone tell me like what are the good password list in offensive security? Rock you, another one,
Yonashi.
and another one, sec list, the big one, the big brother. The sec list has the like lot of the aggregated together. So it also has like one for IoT and the malware attacks that happened in the past. One of them being Mirai botnet one. So we can use that. Now we're going to put in our IP address, which we found previously. It was 192.168.79. And then we're going to change this a bit. The last one was 132. Just copy this for own convenience. First, I will switch to my own directory where I have the passwords ready with me. Oh, and I copied the command. Okay, and wait to the demo gods. Let's see how many, couple of seconds it will have our password. There you go. There is the password. So yeah, this was the first vulnerability we covered from OWASP IoT Top 10, which was hard-coded credentials, which is number one. So you can find this whole standard for OWASP IoT, which has been like created back in 2018, and you can find it from our GitHub repo. And this was the first one we covered, which was default password. Another one is like insecure components. So as I talked to like previously about hardware attacks and stuff like that, in terms of those things, like sometimes what happens is we have features like maintenance mode. What someone may ask, like, what does maintenance mode do? So let's say you have a, let's say, voltage drop or something like that, or some scenario which is coded by a developer to prevent a hardware from crashing and instead going into like recovery mode or stuff like that. So in those regards, you have like maintenance mode and stuff like those features. Or sometimes it's used for debugging and they were developing something and they push that maintenance mode into the production firmware. And they are like, hey, nobody's gonna reverse our so secure firmware because yeah, obscurity is a security, but no, it's not a case. So sometimes it happens. And that is the case we are gonna see in this one. There is a feature over here. Let me share the screen. It was this. Before I continue, I'm gonna share the screen online once again. Online, guys, screen okay? All right. So let's go ahead and explore the web dashboard, which this OpenWRT firmware has. And we are gonna like try to locate the maintenance mode in it, which will literally allows us to do execute commands because developers forgot it and push it to their production firmware. So you may ask, well, hey, CJ, what is the password for this thing? You can actually go to the GitHub repo. If you go under one of the issues, someone has already mentioned the password for this web portal. If you want to log in and explore the various functionalities, so like root, the password is IoTGoat hard coded password. It's a very long password, but yeah, not so secure. But yeah, as I was just speaking in the previous slides, the RAM is so small in these devices, so usually they don't use much RAM. I have given 4 gigabytes, and how many it's using? 9 megabytes. So it's literally overkill over here. But yeah, we are gonna try to locate the maintenance mode in this. Time to switch back the screen. Okay. Online screen good. All right. So we will go back to our extracted firmware. Watch fs root. And now we're gonna look into OpenWRT Lua. So Lua is like a programming language which is used to develop various kind of let's say web portals and stuff like that. Especially in like OpenWRT, you have a Lua scripting used as a programming language for coding like front end and back end and integrating those kind of stuff. It's called Lucy. Lucy is a framework for developing web stuff inside the OpenWRT or like low level embedded devices. So we are gonna locate that the hidden functionality. We will go to USR. We are gonna go to lib Lua. And we're gonna go to Lucy. We're gonna go to controller. Again, if you guys know like basics of web development, you know what is a model view controller. I don't have to explain there. And you will go to this custom one, IoTGoat. And yeah, we have our treasure trove still IoTGoat. So you can see there are like these are the routes are defined over here, and one of them being command inject. That's our hidden functionality over here. And yeah, so basically we can visit this and in a browser and uh, get going. So as you can see, it's a IoT Goat CMD inject. So it will be IoT Goat / CMD inject. I'm gonna reshare this screen. Just a second, online folks. All good online? See. So let's say we are going over here. Let's say so that was admin system. There we go. And it was CMD inject. Right. There you go. Secret development diagnostic space. Perfect. We have command shell over here and kaboom. Let's say. So this kind of things happen all the time, and yeah. And the last thing of this whole demo, which you all gonna love, is a platform. I like it. Not sponsored by this any shape or form, and I haven't been like paid or anything. I'm just doing in a good faith. There are many other content creators out there who have already covered this platform. It's called Bugproof. Bugproof is the firmware analysis automation platform, and there are actually many of those. So, like Microsoft has also one. It's called IoT Defender. That is more of like enterprise side of things. But I like Bugproof because it allows for independent security researchers like us who wants to research stuff and like don't have like a lot of money to run a bunch of cloud instances and stuff like that. So Bugproof is the one of those platforms. Bugproof. I will log in. So yeah, the grace of the founder from the Bugproof, I have been granted the enterprise access for the demo purpose. So we will be able to see all the features it provides. He's whispering in my ear. Show password. There you go. So yeah, what you can do with the Bugproof is that like you can come up here, you have a firmware file, you extract it through various methods like vendor support page or through the hardware or whatever way you found it, or even like Telegram group, some shady Telegram group that you know. But yeah, once you have the firmware acquired, you come here, you upload it, and it's as simple as that. It's gonna ask you a couple of questions. You can group it together in a project. You can also group it together in a product wise as well. So it allows you to very nicely organize things. And let's look into that. And yeah, it has really interesting features like it allows you to see findings, what are the like vulnerable stuff going on here, 0-day scans, if it finds any like potential 0-day vulnerabilities or like any vulnerable functions which are not added to some CVE, but it found, it can list over here. Weak binaries, like it tells you the what kind of protections those enabled for your exploit development purposes, like you have like an explicit or pi or whatever. Dependencies, this is also helpful. And there is a one in a, you can try, like once you put this firmware in a, like let's say your Raspberry Pi, when you download the IoTGoat firmware, either you, if you want to try all the knowledge you learned today, there is a homework assignment I can say for you. You can try. So one of them being is like there are vulnerabilities with the DNS mask actually, and it has a basic stack overflow. So you can actually learn, retry all the knowledge you learned today about basics of ARM exploit development. You can put this IoT Goat image on your Raspberry Pi and try to exploit the DNS mask with this Stack Overflow vulnerability you have and get a reversal. That's basically your homework assignment, you can say. And yeah, this bug proofs tells you everything. And one nice feature I like about bug proof is that the file organization, it does all the heavy lifting automatically for you. You don't have to run commands through binwalk or anything. It allows you to like it has already extracted the root file system. Also it has extracted the other bootloader files and stuff like that as well. You could have extracted these stuff from binwalk as well, but not without like manual interruption. You have to look through all the offsets, and sometimes list is long and it's pain for your eyes. This is very nice. So yeah. And the another one is the kernel. So kernel can be used for emulation purposes. Like we have a lot of emulation frameworks out there. You can use download this kernel file and maybe like use some sort of emulation frameworks. There are like multiple of those. I can say one of them I have personally used is MUX. MUX. This one. This is very nice. You can actually go through the docs, and it has one of those examples given to you how you can emulate the firmware. It has the docs. This one, D-Link DCS. Yeah, interesting one. This one, this IP camera, you can actually learn from this whole documentation how to use this MUX firmware and like how to emulate the entire thing. So many times, as I said, for cost effectiveness, you can buy the target device itself, but you still want to like do a security research. The emulation is the best way, and you can emulate the entire thing locally under your local environment. So this is the one of the ways, and this is where the actually the kernel and all other stuff come useful to you. I will go to files, not the files, MUX, DCS, C kernel. There, that's where the feature of bug proof comes useful. Like if you have already extracted the firmware, you can just download it and use it with the emulation framework like MUX. So that is the one of the example. And the last one, all of you who are like managers and like, hey CJ, come on, how many commands you want me to ask me to run today? I want data. So you can come here, generate a report, and go to your day, and yeah, get things fixed as well, because yeah, that is more important. But yeah, it generates the nice report and everything for you. So yeah, there are like you got a question?
Just curious, what capabilities in terms of dashboard features, analytics, stuff?
So one of the analytics in terms of that, this is still in development, I would say. So this is still in development, but in terms of analytics, you have like this kind of stuff, like basic vulnerability management kind of a deal. And I think they are soon like what I have heard, like they have been trying to gonna integrate with CI/CD pipeline and stuff like that. So if you have a like firmware development going on and you want to set up DevSecOps for your IoT firmwares, you can use tools like this basically. And yeah, that's this platform. And I will go switch screens to our slides. Online screen good. We covered the all the three vulnerabilities from the demo from IoT OWASP IoT top 10 and used OWASP IoTGoat, which is in the spirit of OWASP. And yeah, I talked about what are the firmware analysis platforms you can use. So these are the like the hosted ones. The last two are the hosted ones. The first one is the self-host. So the FeeCAD is the one which is the open source. So if you don't like to pay anyone, just run some firmware analysis dashboard locally, you can just download this fact core. It runs under Docker, but only limitation is its RAM usage. You need to allocate like around 16 gigs of RAM. And it works very well under Ubuntu and Kali Linux, not many other operating systems. So it's a caveat you have to deal with. Either you want to pay someone to handle your infrastructure or you want to deploy it on your own. So you have the open source option, you have the option from enterprise, and you have the option from the new guy, which is like allowing you to do independent security research. Resources to learn IoT security. These are the resources. They're quite popular when you like try to search about learning IoT security and stuff like that. I got the playlist as well on the YouTube. So this playlist has the like I have been building for quite a while, like what are the hardware or like anything like breaking real world devices. I just add it to playlist. That's how I have been building this playlist over the years. And yeah, my socials are this, and if you have any questions, this is the time to ask. Any questions, any doubt, go ahead, don't be shy.
Not all at one for you. So I know with IoT security, you have to have a lot of gadgets. Somebody looking to get into IoT security, do you have any recommendations for somebody?
So you can try like what are the most cost effective ones, or you can try something like Flipper Zero. Now these days we have an option in the market, so you don't have to like bother about soldering all the stuff because Flipper Zero provides most of the features bunched together. Another options would be like Arduino, Raspberry Pi. You can buy the smaller version of the Raspberry Pi, not the like bigger one. All you need is a GPIO pins and hardware interfacing stuff. That should be more than enough.
Is there kind of like emulation like this you can find online?
Like online emulation platform? Not yet. People are still developing those stuff. Even like Bugproof is trying to develop it. So it's in development stuff. Any other questions?
With the emergence of LLM and AI, obviously creating like exploitation POC is much easier. How does that play into IoT security now? Does it make it better or make it more difficult to kind of secure anything?
So securing IoT devices now it comes to like one of the idea I had in the past is like you can use the AI to kind of start developing a firewalls and stuff like that. Again, like LLMs are useful for pattern recognition, right? So you can like let's say you can train. For example, someone just asked me like how you can develop online emulation platform. So you can do that using LLMs. Let's say you can train an LLM to generate the web pages for these IoT devices and stuff like that. You can literally make a emulation platform out of it. if you can like scan the whole internet for responses of the various protocols in IoT and train an LLM to kind of like act as a faking device, that is one of the way of defending you can use.
Any other question? Oh, yes. I was wondering what implement you use it for. Alley or just
The terminal,
so sheet? Yes, but
the IoTGoat. That's you can download it from the GitHub. But the terminal I was using, it was WSL Ubuntu. Back? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. It will be, my slides will be available on my LinkedIn. I will post it.
Yeah, we're also posted to the OWASP website as well.
I will share with them, and yeah.
Anything else for you guys? Yeah, Martin. Well, thank you all for coming. Big thanks to CJ for his awesome talk, and as always, thank you Okta for hosting us. Have a good rest of your day.
So